I went to college at University of Michigan and got into cooking when I was there. Cooked professionally after I graduated for about 4 years, 5 years, and then was feeling burned out. Wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do, so I went back to technology. I have an engineering degree from Michigan, so I started a web development company. Also did graphic design, and so very familiar with Google. And my partner actually, he's over in the Madison building. My old business partner, he started Quickly. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that here, but maybe not. Anyway, so after I started that, I got interested in kind of rediscovered my love for and passion for food, and started. They weren't called pop-ups then. I just started hosting dinners in Ann Arbor. Usually there was a bakery we'd rent out, or I'd have them at my house and stuff like that. And I started getting a huge following, and had a massive email list. So I would announce, "Oh, I'm doing a dinner here," and people would buy tickets and show up. And so I started looking into opening a restaurant in Ann Arbor, and found it to be difficult. In the meantime, opportunity started presenting itself in Detroit. And I was spending more time in Detroit, and there's a lot different energy between the two towns. Everyone in Ann Arbor was like, "Oh, you should really open a restaurant." Okay, that's great, but I need help, supporters, backers to do it. Whereas people in Detroit were like, "Hey, let's open a restaurant." And so it's a different sort of a different attitude. And for someone like myself with an entrepreneurial spirit who's never really had a corporate job or a job, really, I've always just started my own businesses pretty much since I graduated, outside of occasional restaurant work. That sort of energy and spirit really attracted me to the city. So I just kind of took the jump and moved to Detroit and did the pop-ups there, and then food truck, and then another pop-up, and then finally the restaurant. So
that's super interesting. I know that where the location is now, we'll get to this in a minute about the rebirth of that. You started as a food truck for Two James. Yes. Which is directly across the street. So tell us a little bit, before we get to Christina and your background, about the connection there with Two James.
So my partner in the restaurant, Courtney, had this idea, let's get a food truck. And I was like, okay, I guess so. Why not? At the time, I was transitioning out of doing web development and pretty much doing pop-ups full time. And, was actively working on opening a restaurant, but nothing had really materialized quite yet. And so we're like, yeah, let's get the food truck. She wanted it because she did events, so she thought it would be cool to be able to have a truck at her events to serve food or whatever. And I was just interested in cooking all the time. So we bought a truck with the intention of sort of setting up at different spots all around town. But about a couple months after we bought it, it broke down. The axle broke, and so we were storing it at right next door to Two James, because there's a restaurant finally going in there, but that was a spot that I was in talks with about possibly opening a restaurant there. And my good friends had started Two James, so we had planned on serving there already, and then we were stuck there once it broke down, because we didn't have the money to get it fixed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a very highly illegal operation. Yeah. We used to have a drill, if the health department came, because we were broke down, which is a big no-no. And we were in this garage, but we were selling so much food that we were spilling out of the truck. The truck could not contain it. So we're in this garage, and we had a prep refrigerator and these prep tables in there, and next to that was a high-low and a salt truck for like in a snow plow, and it was just like, you can't make this up. Only in Detroit.
Only in Detroit. I was just about to say.
Only in Detroit, in this specific era, could like that have happened. So, so we run this drill. If the health department came, like shut the door, and they're not here today, and we kind of got away with it because our truck was licensed in Royal Oak, and so it didn't really fall under the Detroit jurisdiction, and we just had to like every 6 months like find a way to like get it to Royal Oak to get it re-inspected to like get the thing.
I gotta say, I learn more and more as I hear you tell these stories, like more stuff that I would have never expected to have happened. It's just...
But the truck was...
It's terrifying.
Yeah, the truck was a terrifyingly awesome experience. And like, what was kind of funny about it is a lot of people like thought what we were doing was intentional. Mm-hmm. And we were just like trying to make it happen. We're just like trying to like find a way to make food and sell it and like pay rent and all this kind of stuff. But we had these people come in, from Chicago, like, we heard about this like food truck, and it's like very authentic, like Thai experience, and so they came, and they're like, we were just at Alinea yesterday, and honestly, like, this experience is like it's like you're in Thailand. Like there was even like a rat that like scurried by and like all this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's real authentic. Like,
that's our mascot.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
It was interesting the first time that I went to the old restaurant, which was Takoi.
Yeah.
I would say the building is very unassuming, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all, but I actually thought I was in the wrong place the first time I pulled up to it.
That was very much intentional.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about that, because the location makes sense. The story about being at Two James as a food truck that is or is not mobile, but then looking for space close by,
right,
because you obviously found a market that's really into your food. To look directly across the street at what looks like a white cinder block, no window space, also very small, is very interesting. So tell us about that.
So when we were running the truck, our third partner, Philip, we met. He had just bought that property across the street and wanted to put a restaurant in, and he had kind of a lame concept. And so we're like, hey, let's just do the food truck concept in the restaurant. And sort of the big thing that we both kind of wanted out of it was we wanted it to have like a rabbit hole effect, so that like there's just this white building, and maybe there's a sign, maybe there's not, or there's a red light out front, or it's very unassuming. But then when you walk in, it's like you're into this whole new universe, kind of. So that was kind of what we wanted to do with that. And ultimately we put like a little neon sign and out front, but we pretty much kept the old building intact, up to the false door and of the old entrance and everything. But we just kind of like, we're in such a rush to get open. Like we never landscaped it, never finished anything. There was just dirt piles outside, and for 3 months there's a giant hole in the ground because they were excavating something, and so it never got done. And we started working on the addition, and then that's when the fire happened.
It is exactly that, because when you walk inside, you're like, wait, what just happened? I thought I was walking into almost an abandoned building for...
Right.
Not anymore. I think in Takoi you've done a lot of transformation on the outside, but
yeah.
I love that you kept the inside of Takoi because it's so beautiful. I've heard people compare it to being in South Beach or Soho or some of the more vibrant cities around the world than even in Detroit. But what did you model the inside after?
I think a lot of the inside was sort of, before we opened the first time, was a little bit kind of improv. We had a sort of aesthetic that was planned, which was the bar in the front, the dining room, and so it was kind of like layers of an onion, like bookends. Like you come in and there's one experience, and then there's another experience, and then there's like the kitchen experience. And the polycarbonate was always planned, but our architect, he's like amazing, but he can be like, for lack of a better term, a little stiff, and he wanted a specific like warm light behind the panels. And so when we're building it, Philip, who is our other partner, he's a little bit more irreverent and excited, and he was like, no, let's have colored lights, and so like when Ish was around, we kind of like took all his work and like, oh no, let's do this, and all the stuff that he would never allow, we kind of did, and it took on its own personality. Everything from like, there was like a crown of lights around the building and stuff like that. So.
It's so inspiring, and maybe someday when people are in another city in the U.S., they'll say, "Oh, this is just like being in Detroit," because you've given us something really cool to go off of.
We wanted a restaurant that you could only have in Detroit.
It feels like
and
that.
so keeping like the inside. No painting on the cinder block, and just keeping it like all old and keeping the graffiti in there and stuff like that was like
it's
very
also
parts of it.
Really interesting to note the fact that even for Ish, our architect, this was the first restaurant he'd ever designed.
Yeah.
So you have 4 people, 3 partners who've never had a restaurant before, brick and mortar, and this is what they come up with. And another interesting thing to note about the interior of the restaurant is that the booths and the tables are all extremely low set.
Yeah.
Would you say it was like Japanese?
Yeah, and
inspired?
that was very much intentional by the architect. He wanted everything to be on the same plane and low set, which is sort of an Eastern philosophy of eating and being close to the ground. A lot of Eastern cultures, people sit on the ground or at very low tables, and so that was all very intentional. Ish, like, he thinks about things that like I would never think about, So
that's a good
it's
partner
awesome.
to have.
It's great.
Well,
great.
Christina, I want to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about your background too, and how you came into the restaurant.
Well, I'm originally from Chicago. I went to school in New York, and after school, I thought I wanted to do market research. I was a business analyst for first 2 years, and then it wasn't really fitting me. And then I wanted to go back into education. That's kind of what I studied originally. Went to Spain, lived abroad, taught there. Still, something wasn't exactly pulling at my heart. I found my way in Philadelphia, in part for a boy, in part for a job. I will confess that. And that's actually where I got my start in food. And so I just needed to hit the reset button. I needed to do something where I would find immediate results. I missed having a job that had some physicality to it, some instant results. And so I got my start in a really tiny cafe. And then pretty much from there on out, for the past 8.5, 9 years, I've only worked for startups. I've only worked for small businesses. So from that, I loved being able to wear many hats and just try on so many different roles. In many ways, I was a manager, but I would also be doing payroll, or I would also be doing the marketing, or I'd be doing the social media. So I think, similar to Brad, I really enjoyed having that entrepreneurial spirit and being able to work with food and work within a community. And in Philadelphia, people are great. Philly's a great town, and I think I came in when they were having their food renaissance, and that really kept me inspired and kept me interested. And so the last place I worked at, I was running 3 different locations, one in New York, one in a Whole Foods, and our brick and mortar location. I worked for a hummus place. And then next door to me, I actually shared a kitchen with another restaurant that was part of our restaurant group. And I met Drew Pompa, who is the original bar director of Takoi. He had known Brad and Courtney and Philip for quite some time. And he was telling me back it was only May, he was saying, I'm thinking about going back. I'm like, but you've only been here for 6 months. Like, you haven't even seen what Philly has to offer. And he started telling me more and more about what his job was, what his position was. Ironically, his restaurant had thrown a fundraiser for Takoi when it burned down. So that was only the first instance that I had heard of the restaurant. And so everyone in the restaurant community in Philadelphia got together and raised a couple $1,000s for a restaurant that none of us had ever been to. So there's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of interest in this place already. He was telling me that they were looking for a general manager, and I said, I'm pretty happy with my job. And then he managed to convince Philip and Brad to fly out to meet me. And I thought that was so incredible. That's so impressive. Only very serious people or crazy people will do that.
Right.
So we had a wonderful conversation, and I was a little intrigued, and I didn't feel like I could make a decision from there. Within 2 weeks' time, I booked a flight to Detroit. It was a 24-hour trip. I met Courtney, the third partner, and she whisked me around town, and she was like the velvet glove that made the decision so much easier. She introduced me to so many different people, and I began to see what Drew had been talking about, what all this intrigue and all this excitement and opportunity in Detroit was through Courtney's eyes and obviously through the rest of the team. So within a week, cool. I made my decision to move and completely try something new. And that's how I ended up with this family.
Little known, she doesn't even know this fact right now, but
oh no.
When we first Philip sent me out to Philly to go talk to Drew to see if gauge his interest in coming back to Detroit.
To win him back.
Yeah, to win him back. Bring him back. And this was when we were rebuilding, and I met Christina on that trip. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, I was like, I think I'm gonna try and bring her back to be general manager.
Wow.
She didn't even know that. Yeah. The seed was planted early on.
All the meanwhile, I was feeding you food and making it nice.
That's a lot of plotting of you, Christina.
I know. The plotting didn't come until after we left, but I was like, I had this idea. It was in my head, and then Drew was like, I think I have someone. And I was like, oh, is it Christina? And he was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, yeah, all right.
Well, we're not here to promote any other restaurants in Detroit, but I'm so curious. What was that moment that you had? Was it a bunch of other places that you went and saw that there was a really vibrant food scene here, or was there an actual moment that you thought you could make Detroit your culinary home?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I had been to Detroit a couple times before, had some really great meals. I have a few friends that are from the city. But I think it was more about the opportunity to work with Brad, the opportunity to work with Philip and Courtney, and just all the way that they felt about this business and everything that they thought that it could be. I'm someone that has always chosen opportunities based on the people that I get to work with. If I get to have a really good team, Lord knows how far you can go. So I don't know if it was Brad's anecdotes or if it was,
Now
Philip's
she's super annoyed with me all the time.
Yeah. I feel like we're on Sally Jesse.
As that happens in good teams, though, that's a really important thing here for us at Google too. Is you spend most of your life actually working with the people that you work with is a really major part of successful teams. Yeah. So that's exciting to hear. I want to talk about the food for a minute too. So I don't know if you know this, but I was at the restaurant on Saturday night, and I thought it was really interesting because I knew I was going to get a great meal, but it's very much an experience. I hope that that's a favorable adjective 100%. That you use. When our server came to our table, she actually said, "I'll be your guide for the night," and all four of us at the table won a lot more culinary wise than the other three of us. We noticed that right away, and we asked her about it when she came back, and she said, one thing about Takoi is that we hope to awaken all five of the senses, so, we don't want you to just have a sweet and savory experience, we want it to be everything. Can you talk to us a little bit about that notion that, we have servers who are more so guides that take us through our experience at Takoi?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just in terms of nomenclature, the idea of server and waiter is very antiquated. And I think for us, we want to have a level of inclusivity, We want people to feel seen, heard. This is a safe place. So the idea of having someone be a guide is a lot more accurate of what the experience is for anyone new or a veteran that's coming in. And so many of the foods and the ingredients are incredibly unfamiliar to people. Mm-hmm. So the idea of a person who is super knowledgeable, who is super passionate, is able to walk you through and help you curate the choices of what you're going to be experiencing. I mean, so much of what Brad's cooking is bold, flavorful, loud, spicy, things on the extreme. So depending on what it is that people need and what people want, if you're a newbie who doesn't necessarily want to have something that's super spicy, certainly someone will be able to provide something for you. There's something for everyone on that menu, which is super exciting.
The connection back to technology or social media or however you want to say it is very interesting, because when you do look at your menu online, there are a lot of things that to the novice person you're not familiar with. Like, I'm going to say it wrong, but the branzano, the full fish that comes out. One of our guests was like, I've never heard of that before. So I went to YouTube and I watched a 10-minute video on how to eat a whole fish, because there is an actual technique. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about how you guys are using technology, social media, or what channels you're finding success growing the business with.
Well, I think we use technology every day. And I think that we'll continue to use it more and more. Everything from our reservation ticketing system is called Talk, so it's online, and rather than, we don't have reservations in the traditional sense, but you can buy a ticket to come to the restaurant with a group. And then, so similar to like going to a concert or something like that. So like that's one example. And of course, there's Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. But everything from spreadsheets to, I think we only scratch the surface on how much we could use technology.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot more that we can do to maximize, especially once we start delving more into video. Brad always says, like, he never wants to tell people how to eat their food.
Right.
But I think, a lot of times people will reference, how do people make decisions on where they're going to eat for a weekend? They're going to go to Yelp, they're going to go to Google, and they're going to go to Instagram. And so with all those things, we rely so heavily on those visual cues and those visual choices. And by bolstering up those pieces, it allows for people to understand what they can expect. I mean, for me, I didn't have the opportunity to visit the restaurant before I decided to move. I didn't have the opportunity to even taste the food. So in many ways, I was coming in as a consumer. I was coming in as like a brand new person. And so from what I had gleaned based on social media, based on everything that I had read, was a lot of important information. And I think the more that we translate our story and our narrative that way, the more powerful it can be.
Yeah, we are in an environment where it's sight, sound, and motion is now cost of entry. So it's more than the Instagrams of the world where you have these beautiful images of food. Video is something that we talk a lot about with our customers here at Google. It's kind of if you don't have it, you're not on a consideration list. Right. So that's interesting. What would be if you had endless budgets, marketing budgets, to produce some crazy video? What would be your dream video that would, not an anthem per se, but what? Is it how to eat a whole fish, or is it something else that you would want to use to promote the restaurant?
Like, you mean if I had my own Netflix show?
Or anything. Would you create your own Netflix show? Anything.
No, well, I think it would start with sort of some how-tos, educational sort of things on how some of the food is prepared, and not necessarily how you eat it, but how it's presented, and sort of culture and history around that. We use a lot of different techniques that aren't used in a lot of other kitchens. Most places are French based, so a lot of people come work for me and they're like, this doesn't make sense. It's like exact opposite of everything that I've been taught. So I think that would be sort of the start. Sort of the process and what is behind the food, because everything we make is from scratch, and there's different pastes and fermentations and stuff like that. And so to me, as like kind of like a nerd, like that's what I would be into. Like I would want to see the video of like, oh, how do they ferment that, or how do they make that, you know? So I think that's kind of where it would start and kind of evolve from there. But maybe Christina has some different ideas.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely important. I think so much of what the experience is at Takoi is encouraging people to take risks. I mean, like you said, the exterior is very, in many ways, unassuming and uninviting. And what is it? Like, how do you encourage people to take risks? And then how do you then reward them for being awesome and trying something new and trying something that they never expected they would like? So I think getting people to understand some of the base of the ingredients, but also profiling the different spaces within. Going back to the interiors, we also have a DJ room. We also have, which is an annex, which is a waiting room, which is a threshold into the patio. So there are so many different features to the space that are really interesting and very complex, but ultimately a place where people can find themselves within. I think it's allowing for people to find themselves within our world that can make it a really wonderful experience.
One thing that I think is kind of the elephant in the room, so I'll let you guys take this question and answer it however you want, but there's a lot of speculation around the fire, around what happened. And a lot of fans who here, even in this room, who had been to Takois several times and were shocked when the fire happened and the delay between Takois and now what's Takoi. So feel free to address that however you want.
I was in Thailand at the time that the fire happened. Luckily, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't you.
It wasn't me. Luckily, it was at the tail end of my trip, so I didn't have like a tough decision to make. I was leaving the next day. But yeah, there's always been a lot of speculation about the fire. But basically, what happened was, like I was saying, we were building a new addition to the. And we had put on another shipping container, and the bar was going to extend out to the right side. And then there's going to be like a little secret garden on the side, like patio. And they had just put in a glass screen door, which is now still on the shipping container that's in a different spot. But what they failed to take into consideration was that screen door was completely shielded off from Michigan and also from 17. So anyone could easily come and not be seen from that side. So what happened was there was a series of break-ins that night. The first one was at Nemo's down the street, and someone went in, smashed the window, stole a bunch of booze, and then a little bit later that night, there was a break-in at our place. So someone had smashed that screen window, went into that shipping container, and then broke the window to get into the restaurant. And again, no one's going to see this or hear it happening. Went in and stole pretty much all the booze within arm's reach, and ran out the back door. They found like one of the bags of booze out there, and we had a little tip safe up at the counter where actually the fire started. They smashed open with an axe that we had by our smoker that we used to like split wood to put into the smoker. So it was someone who was familiar with, who had walked around in the neighborhood to know that wood splitter was there, to know that that entrance had literally 2 days before the fire just been installed. So as someone in the area, and then they started a fire at the host stand, which why they did, we don't know. The speculation that we have is at the host stand was where we kept the stereo equipment, and so our thought was that they probably thought that was a camera system. and because it's not clear that it's stereo, and so that was all wood encased, so they started a fire there and ran out the back door. There was a witness. There was a suspect, and I believe that there was someone brought into custody that said that they broke in but didn't start the fire. But there's no proof linking them to the whole thing. But
It's still an unsolved mystery.
it's an unsolved mystery. As far as I know,
Yeah.
I haven't checked in on it for a long time. Right afterwards, you're like, you want to catch the person, and then you start realizing that more than likely the person who did this was like, there's no, the punishment doesn't fit the crime, kind of like, what, it's not going to bring the restaurant back.
Yeah.
This guy's life already is not good. He's probably homeless, alcoholic.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, this is, if he goes to jail, his life will probably be better.
Yeah.
Debatable, but
Yeah, trials and tribulations for sure. So you reopened in December of 2017, or was
August.
it? It was August.
August.
Yeah, and we were all thrilled to see you reopen. So talk to us a little bit about maybe the future. What is Takoi? Is it going to grow beyond the space it's in now, or any other plans for 2.0?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, we've been open, what now, 6 months? And finally hit our stride, and still dealing with crazy busy Saturdays like the one that you were at. And we're trying to figure out more ways how we can offer different features. So Brad is doing once a month these special green room dinner series. They're like small, intimate dinners where he's cooking food that has never been on the menu before. They're completely one-off, and they're inspired by different regions of Thailand. So this past one that he did was Southern Thai cuisine, and the one before that was Northern Thai cuisine.
Yeah.
In addition to that, what is different from 1.0 is that we now have DJs that regularly play. So there's Wednesdays for happy hour, and then Friday and Saturday nights. So we're definitely going to build out that as like a feature and have some great acts during movement, hopefully. Just a lot. We're going to be opening up patio.
Season, yeah.
Oof.
Plans for a patio. That's exciting.
The patio, when we opened, wisely we decided not to open the patio also. That gives us a little bit of time to like figure out what we want to do. But yeah, we're gonna have food out on the patio that's a little bit different from what you get inside. It's gonna be more kind of kind of like as if you were visiting a street stall in Thailand or something like that. So very kind of street food, and it's gonna be cool. And then from there isn't plans for Takoi 2.0, but we are, same team, opening a restaurant called Magnet. We'll be opening in August.
Where will Magnet be located?
It's in Detroit, Grand River and Warren. So our partner Philip owns some property over there. So Takoi is in an old garage. This is in an old radiator shop. Wow. So there's like, I think it'll very much be the sister restaurant, but won't be the same. Like you'll know it's by the
totally
same people.
Different menu.
Totally different style.
Totally different style. What would the style of Magnet be?
Without going into it,
sorry. Has this been announced?
Yeah.
Is this your official announcement?
This could be.
Oh,
a little bit.
Nice. Yes.
It's I won't get into specific like regions of the world, but the whole kitchen is going to be fire driven. So it's wood fired grill, wood fired oven, wood fired plancha, coal pit. So the whole kitchen is all based on wood fire, live wood fire cooking. So that informs it quite a bit. And I think the other aspect of it's going to be very plant focused. So heavy vegetarian, vegan influence. From there, I think the world is our palate. I think more what we're kind of going for is like creating like for lack of a better term, Detroit food, like something that could only come from here, based on what's around us and stuff like that. So
Something other than Faygo Red Pop and Better Made potato chips and Buddy's Pizza, which we love. Those are great things.
All great, but we don't have to.
We need a new
It
palate.
doesn't mean it's Detroit just because you braise your ribs in rock and rye or
right.
crumple Better Made chips on it. So,
where does the name Magnet come from?
So the former business that was there was called Magnet Radiator Works.
Cool.
And so
Great.
when we got the building, I was like, that's a cool name. And so we started thinking about, creatively, what's the concept of a magnet? And a magnet is something that sort of attracts and pulls people or items together. And so that's kind of loosely the theme going behind the food, is that the idea of like, what are the foods near us, around us, that we're sort of attracted to, and what are the foods that are kind of like attracted to each other. So that's sort of like the basis of creatively how I'm approaching it.
What's your soft launch date or target open date? Do you have one?
That I can't say.
A tough one?
Sometime in the summer.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
all right.
Probably on the later side.
Great. Well, that's exciting.
Don't hold me to August. But
looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I want to allow time if there's any questions. It looks like we've got one over here to start with.
Yeah, thanks guys for coming in. We really appreciate it. Takoi is definitely my favorite spot in all of Detroit, hands down. So thank you. One comment and two questions. Sorry to be that guy. The comment is, I think it's awesome that with this new Magnet restaurant that you're not shying away from having open fire in your restaurant. It's almost like a homage to Takoi. So
Yeah.
I like
the
that.
irony is that we're going to have open fire, and then the design that our architect Ish has come up with for the whole front of house is all wood. So, we'll
see
see.
what happens.
Hey, fingers
Be
crossed.
very careful.
Two questions. One's real, well, not simple, but I'm just curious why Thai was the selected food choice for Katoi, now Takoi. And then two, if you could maybe expand a little bit. I've heard the story from Courtney on the transition period, what happened between the fire at Katoi and the reopening of Takoi, in terms of keeping all of your employees on and bouncing around to make sure that there was always something to do. And I also like the story about the rally of all of the restaurants, not just around Detroit, but around a lot of the Midwest and even to the East Coast, that kind of showed support to raise money for you guys to keep you moving.
Well, I'll start with the first question. Why Thai? There's really no great answer to it. It was a philosophy and style of food that I just found myself probably about 8 to 10 years ago migrating towards without really knowing, the concepts of sweet and sour, salty, savory, spicy. I started incorporating heavily into sort of my Italian Mediterranean cooking I was doing at the time. And around that time is when I started exploring Asian markets and discovered fish sauce and all this, and started really studying. I'm always a curious cook, so probably have 400, 500 cookbooks, so I'm always trying to learn the next thing. And this was just what I sort of migrated to. But I had an issue always being known as the Italian guy or the Mediterranean guy. And so I would be doing these Thai dishes, but labeling it on my menu as like Italian food, kind of renaming it based on the ingredients that were in it. And so finally, when Courtney decided to do the food truck and asked me about it, I was like, if we're doing the food truck, this is when I'm just going to switch over and just come at food completely from a Thai Southeast Asian perspective, rather than sprinkling that into the food that I currently make. And the nature of the food truck being street food and stuff like that felt like the natural jump off point to doing Thai full time. Now with like going into Magnet, it's like, how am I gonna? I don't know that I can fully go back to doing a different style of food because I'm warped from once you go Thai, you don't go back. Yeah. But it'll be a lot of fun revisiting sort of some food I cooked before with new knowledge and a new palate, and bringing sort of some of that dynamic boldness of Thai cuisine into something that may be more Mediterranean or Italian or Middle Eastern or something like that, or Indian. It's always just trying to find new flavors and expanding, my knowledge as well as what we're feeding guests, Yeah. And then the second question.
Yeah, the second question was the process that happened between Katoi and Takoi.
Yeah, so a lot happened in between that. So the fire happened, and I got back, and the first thing you think is like, I have 42 employees who don't have income, don't have a job. Like, what are we gonna do? And luckily, the community, being as awesome as it is, rallied, and there was fundraisers seemingly like every day, everywhere, like, and so we used that money to give to all the employees like a little stipend until they could find temporary new work, because we knew we couldn't keep everyone on. So we basically kept like a management team and some few others, like a core group that we employed throughout the duration of the closure. So on my end, I started doing what I did before and organizing pop-ups all over the place. So Motor City Wine, and we did one at Maple Gray, the Gray Ghost, Selden Standard, and it also just happened to correspond with the opening of a place called Frame in Hazel Park, which their concept was having prolonged residencies for guest chefs. And so they were just about to open, so it worked out perfectly. We were there for 3 months, and we did dinners 3 days a week, two seatings 3 days a week, and that kept like my team pretty nimble. We were working on stuff that whole time.
I attended one of those, and I thought it was interesting because we just assumed that with this pop-up at Frame that we were gonna have a table for 4, and it was a happy surprise that when we went, it was family style seating. So we were seated at a table with like 15 people, and we had a chance to get to know a bunch of people and talk about the food together. So I loved that concept and what that was.
So it was very much after the fire, like I felt more like a FEMA officer than like a chef, but the community was like absolutely amazing, like just so supportive. Everything from chef friends hiring some of my kitchen people, even though they knew it was going to be temporary, and or hiring servers or whatever. And so
I think that's
great.
the magic of Detroit. You won't find another city where people are willing to help each other more in circumstances like that.
Yeah, and I think the fact that there was this public sort of rallying around our staff, that it influences places like Philly or Chicago or something else, that they other people see that, and it's hard not to get swept up in that.
In the community.
And I think people can relate to it. They go to work every day and they're like, if my place burned down, like what would I do? So
that was certainly the mentality that the former restaurant group that I worked for had. I mean, we all were very aware that they had also just been nominated for a James Beard Award.
Right.
And then just, a week or two later, a fire happened. So, the Philly community had this whole idea of like a brother in arms scenario and wanted to do anything, to do everything that they could do to help. So, yeah.
Philly. Tell us, last but not least, because I know we're getting close on time, tell us about the dish that you brought here today for us.
So the dish I brought today is called Sum Tum Thai. It's a very common, we serve it at the restaurant, and it's very prevalent all over the country of Thailand. It's one of the few sort of traditional dishes that we do. In Thailand, there's probably infinite variations on it. Everyone has their own sort of version of it, depending on what region of the country you're in. But the basis of it is sam is sour, and tum is to pound. So the idea is it's a generally sour sort of salad that's built in a mortar and pestle. So it's the defining characteristics: sour and spicy always. So it's green papaya that's been pounded with a little bit of garlic, Thai chilies, tomatoes, long beans, and fish sauce, palm sugar, little lime juice. Normally in Thailand you'd always find dried shrimp in it. I like the dried shrimp in it, but as a crowd pleaser, we tend to take it out of there. So
excellent. I saw a lot of bowls being filled back there, so thank you very much. And thank you so much for coming in for today. Let's get one more round of applause for our guests from Takoi. Thank you.